Michelle.
There we go.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Monday, January 4th, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Building Committee. And why don't we start with a roll call and just answer here when I read your name. Let's see, Councilmember Markley,
Here.
Councilmember Franich,
Here.
Bob Larson,
Here.
Katrina Knudsen,
Here.
Paul Rice,
Here.
and Michelle Thomas.
Here.
Okay. I think everybody got a copy of the agenda that you sent out. And it should be in front of you here. Our first agenda, approval of the minutes. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast here.
Move to approve the minutes.
Pardon?
Move to approve the minutes.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
I have a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. Okay, now we can go to the agenda items. Okay. First item there is a focus of the committee in 2021. And
What about the updates to the Title 15?
pardon?
Updates to Title 15?
We had to update the agenda.
Oh,
Did everybody get that, the updated one?
I apparently didn't, so that's off.
Well, I gave you the updated one, Councilman Franich,
Oh,
when we were on the phone.
So Chair, if we could add in a presentation to the committee by the building official, Fire Marshal Paul Rice as agenda item number 1 regarding Title 15 updates quickly, that would be great.
That's fine. Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely.
sorry, Bob.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to provide a quick update to the committee regarding the updates to Title 15, which is the buildings and construction. After a 7-month delay, the state has adopted, or will be adopting this February, the state building code. Along with that comes, the state requires that all jurisdictions enforce the state building code. We've obviously made some amendments to that needed to be adopted. And basically they're just more housekeeping type updates. Just wanted to give you a heads up that that'll be coming at our next council meeting, the first reading of our ordinance. There really weren't a whole lot of big, broad, sweeping changes that were made from the 2015 codes to the 2018 codes, fortunately. So most of our amendments are more like grammatical type changes that we needed to make. There were a couple definitions that are now obsolete. Not really a lot of substantive changes. So actually, when it was reviewed by Daniel, he thought this could be more of an administrative type of an ordinance, but our code doesn't allow for that. So we will have to go through 2 readings of the ordinance to council. And that's pretty much it. Just kind of wanted to give you a heads up that that's coming. And you'll have plenty of opportunity to review our ordinance over the next 2 council meetings. So.
Okay, so I assume the first reading will have a public hearing also at that first reading?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this will be part of the agenda packet then going into that meeting.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Any questions on that? Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, are you looking at the raise hand deal, Bob, or do we just kind of speak up, or how are you doing it?
Just wave your hand. I can pick that up faster than I can read all
Okay.
the other things.
All right. So Paul, does the IBC or the state, which trumps what?
Well, the state adopts the International Building Code series, which includes the International Fire Code, Mechanical Code, Fuel Gas Code, and existing building code, and then the Uniform Plumbing Code. And then our state makes amendments to those international codes. So there's not really a trumping, it's the same code, it's just been amended by the state. And then we, in turn, make additional amendments to the state building code. For any local, most of our amendments are for consistency with other divisions. We've amended our code to include a permit for signs, for instance. so that we're more consistent with our design manual criteria. A lot of it is, a lot of our amendments, well, say, for instance, we have a marina ordinance because we have a marina here. The original fire code, the International Fire Code never had a marina ordinance or even addressed marinas. So we, as the city, created that, got it adopted at the state level, and now our marina code is actually utilized and has been adopted at the international level. So it's just some, if we've got local items, those are basically the amendments that we have.
So we do have the ability to present amendments, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, our amendments, though, the one caveat to that is our amendments, any amendments that we make need to be more restrictive to the code. We can't make them less restrictive.
Well, okay, that takes the fun out of where I was going with it, so. Okay, well, I won't take up too much time because we got a lot of good things to talk about here. After that comes out on the agenda packet, I'll probably be calling you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Great. Thank you very much, Paul, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks at the first reading.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm assuming that what I obviously have is the old agenda in front of me. And item 1 through 5 are just the same as they were before after this Title 15 discussion. Great. Okay. Focus of the committee in 2021. That was an item that I had asked to be put on there. And I'm interested in the overall committee's opinion of where our focus should be, both council and staff. Okay. My initial thinking, and it's still pretty much my thinking, that I'll just share, and then I'll go around the horn here and see what other ideas there are. It is primarily one of, in any way possible, facilitating to get done what's on our plate. We got a lot on the plate this year, and a lot of it slipped from 2020 calendar year that didn't get done, as opposed to adding a whole lot of new stuff, new things to work on. Okay. Now that doesn't say that it's not exclusive, but the focus, I think, my view is the focus should be on getting done what's on our plate. That's really the number one thing, and any way we can facilitate it. So with that, I will kind of ask for comments. Let's start with Council Member Markley.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Bob. I don't think that we should add anything new if we don't need to. I think we should do exactly like you said, just look at what's on our plate, look at what the most immediate needs are, focus on those. I did have a question. Is the first meeting in January when these committees get all switched around and council members go to other committees potentially?
Historically, that's the way it has been.
Okay.
That has not come up yet, because we've
Yeah.
got this interesting situation where we're going to exist as a committee for 2.5 or 3 months and then reorganize.
I know. So that was kind of where I was going a little bit with that was, if we make, set a plan and make a decision, and then 3 new council members come onto this committee and change it up, I'm a little concerned about that. I don't know. I mean, it's our meeting, it's our rules, right? So can we make some kind of, and this is kind of derailing slightly, but is there a way to make some kind of a motion to extend our committees out for like 6 months or something, just for some stability, and then maybe we change in the middle of the year this year instead of January? I mean, I don't know if you guys are opposed to that or what. It's just a thought before we go through all of this and then have it just be undone in 2 weeks. So that it's just a thought.
A good thought. Councilmember French.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Tracy. Or Councilmember Markley. Kit is kind of, I haven't had a discussion with him about this recently, but there was some discussion since, we've only, as Councilmember Hines pointed out, been on these committees for 2 or 3 months that we were going to, Kit initially had said he thought it might be a good idea if we stay on the same committee to the end of the year that we were on for the last 3 months. Now, I don't know. I think that's a good idea. I don't know what the other 4 council members feel about it. I don't know, Councilmember Markley, if we have the control over that. I think the mayor is the one that really has the power to appoint people to these committees. And what I'm hoping for is we're all supposedly by now, and maybe Bob Larson can chime in on this, by now we're supposed to all put in our list of the committees that we want to be on. And has that been talked about, Bob?
It has not that I'm aware of. I think your suggestion, though, I just had a brief conversation. This probably goes back about the time that we switched over to the committee format, that there would be a likelihood, and I'm not saying this is what had been decided because we didn't decide anything or the mayor didn't decide anything, just to carry it over into 2021 and then talk to council at the appropriate time. Usually those things are done at the second meeting in January. You got to be an appropriate time to bring it up. But I think, yeah, it's a reasonable expectation that you wouldn't necessarily want to be swapping out committees so quickly here. But
Could we discuss it at the retreat, or is the retreat after the second meeting? Like, could we table it at the second meeting if we have to do it procedurally? Could we table it to the retreat and talk about it at the retreat?
We could bring it up as a possible item of discussion. It probably wouldn't necessarily need that level of detail, Councilor Markley. I think what would be said is that, at the January 25th meeting would be the preference of council, not necessarily, if it's a preference and there's consensus not to necessarily want to change up on the committees. I think the mayor would be willing to honor that. I'm not speaking on his behalf, but it seems kind of obvious. You only got started with this thing later in 2020, and just you got a few folks just getting comfortable just getting on a committee, new members of the council.
Yeah.
So
maybe I could request to add it as an agenda item for the January 25th meeting.
Yes, if it's not there already. I was going to talk to Molly about that, but I thought it was already on there for boards and commissions.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
in committee assignments. I don't have it right in front of me, but I could take a look at that later. But I'm pretty sure the stuff we sent out to you on December 23rd had that schedule of all the meetings. I think on the January 25th meeting, it had something about the.
I think I did see that on there.
Yeah. So we can have more discussion. Mayor's not here available today, so I can't even talk to him about it. But I think that's where I'm suggesting we were headed that way. We being obviously the mayor and then the council. So.
Okay.
Councilmember French, you got your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. Just to circle back on the original question. Yeah, I think we've got a pretty full plate as far as adding. I'm not for adding a lot of new things to the, unless something comes up throughout the course of the year, that we find is important to address. The only thing I would just like to maybe get a quick clarification from Ms. Knutson on is, towards the end of last year, there was some discussion about variance criteria. And, I forget the name of the darn case that kind of said that, just because the guy down the street got the variance doesn't necessarily mean that was the rationale for giving out variances all along. Did you ever have a chance to look into that or talk to Daniel?
Yeah, the city attorney and I have discussed that. It was probably early December. And in knowing where you're going with potential code amendment, that's something that the city administrator, mayor, and I will need to talk about. I need to get their their prioritization of the work plan. And then once we have that, we'll bring it to the committee about prioritization, because, we're hoping to get all of it done, but we do need to have a plan going forward that starts with the mayor and city administrator in terms of what's going to start first and then what's going to come next.
I completely understand that and appreciate that. I just didn't want to make sure that it didn't fall off the edge of the earth.
Yeah, it's
No,
still
no.
there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just from my own perspective, I think your proposal, Councilmember Markley, is a good one. I think if you look at both continuity this year and continuity going forward, okay, into the following year, I think the idea of, take the 3 months or 4 months in 2020, add the 12 months, divide by 2, and that's what you got. Okay, the old, the new. I think it gives you the opportunity to make some transitions, because if we keep them the same, and by the way, as far as operations go, I think it's great for this year. The ongoing assignments would be great. However, we've been on those same committees basically 2 years. By the end of this year, both the quote new council members and the older council members will have been on the same committee assignment for 2 years. Okay, even though we didn't meet all that much in 2020, early in 2020, when we were experimenting with council of the whole, or committee of the whole. I'm sorry, committee of the whole. So I think it's kind of a fielder's choice, to be quite honest. I think you can put together pros and cons of each proposal, but it should be a good discussion item. Okay, and I think your idea, just on the amendment thing, is a good one, Councilmember French. I've looked at all the things that we've done in terms of amending the code, particularly Chapter 17 to be exact. If that could all go for naught in the variance game if we don't watch out. Called, well, so and so got it. Why can't we get it? Okay, and so I think that's a good item to be pursuing. Okay, any more discussion on focus of the committee? Great.
Councilmember Himes,
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I cannot figure out how to raise my hand here for some reason.
That's okay. Just
I
raise.
just literally raised my hand.
There you go. just like first grade,
Yeah, exactly. Got this. Just a couple of suggestions for the committee members' consideration. There's some larger scale, like regional things that are going on. The growth manage or the GMCC, PCRC, they're going to be looking at the countywide planning policies and updating them this year. I think that would be something that the committee, Councilmember Himes, if you're sitting on that for the city, to be able to bring that information back and have a city discussion on that, I think that would benefit us from having not only a staff level discussion, but from an elected perspective, what's going on, at least on Pierce County level, to ensure that we are commenting on things we may, agree or disagree on. So that's one thing for consideration. The other, and I wrote this in an email to you all last week, was we're anticipating this to be a pretty busy session in terms of land use law and growth management. We do know that there's at least one omnibus bill that will be coming forward for pretty dramatic growth management act amendments that are being proposed. And looking at from a city perspective, both good and bad, it would behoove us to, in my opinion, to stay on top of that and know what's going into those bills and have a plan for how this committee can review that and potentially have input to the Intergovernmental Affairs Council Committee. And, I mentioned it to Councilmember Franich earlier today. I do really think that, it's not going on now, but having a game plan for when those bills start rolling out for how we're going to review them and how comments are going to flow to our lobbyists, I think would benefit us. So those are just my two suggestions.
Those are good. Just for clarification, the Growth Management Act part of it is state focused versus, let's say, Puget Sound Regional Conference stuff that we've seen prior to this. We're still on the two separate tracks.
Correct. We are still on the two separate tracks. That is something that's on our legislative agenda already, that we want to have those two things identified and kind of defined. But yes, in terms of the suggestions I just made, one would be getting involved at the Pierce County level through PCRC, specifically for countywide planning policy purposes. And then the second suggestion is more of a legislative GMA, getting in on commenting on any amendments that are being looked at that would impact the city.
Okay, great. Well, one thing I think that might help this committee, every time I go to a PCR meeting, I come up with a new subcommittee of something. Okay, we got more committees than Carter's got liver pills. I mean, it just keeps coming at you. Okay, and I haven't been able to put all the pieces together yet. Okay, it would really be helpful for a future item to take us through it and at least have it as a reference material for the whole council, so that they can kind of put this together. I had no idea there were all these various coordinating committees, everything from transportation to land use. I don't know, there's a bunch of them, and these are at county level. Okay. In fact, some of them, we may have members of your staff that are on some of these committees. I don't even know it. So
It was in Public Works as well. They sit on the transportation side. So with that suggestion, we'll work on maybe for the February, we can map out. I mean, I think it'd be good as well for you to know what PSRC, the Puget Sound Regional Council, is, and the subcommittees off of that, because there is also opportunity for the city to sit on those at a Puget Sound wide level.
okay, because what I'm thinking of is the way in which we addressed and hopefully will continue to address the possible commercialization of the Tacoma Narrows Airport. If there's anything in there that's really objectionable to us, it would be nice to attack on all fronts. No stone unturned. In subcommittees, in PCRC, in county, in PSRC, all the way down the line, called "This is our story," okay, and pushing for what we want and pushing against what we don't want. So I'd like to have the whole council aware of that, and so that we can go at some of these things with a coordinated effort. It seemed to have worked, or has worked to date. I better watch what I say. Has worked to date on the airport issue, but I'd like to expand that to see if we can have more success with that. I think it works. Okay. Anything else on that one? And by the way, the other next three items feed right into that whole thing. And let me go back to you, Councilmember Frenich. You had your hand up and I lost it somewhere on the side of the screen.
Yeah, okay. And so I got three quick questions. So Bob Larson, since Pierce County sent a letter in withdrawing their sponsorship request, does that pretty much kill it unless some other jurisdiction makes a sponsorship through the CACC? Does that kill it?
It all depends, right? They're a sponsoring organization. I mean, they're the owners of the airport. The owners, now there wasn't the full county council that voted, as you know, it was just the executive and our county council who voiced that. So I don't think it would turn, but usually when the sponsor says we're not interested, that usually it puts an end to it. For instance, I think Olympia did something similar to that. And so, but I can't guarantee that, Councilmember Frenich, but I would expect that should be the end of it. The county council should be making a formal vote on it, frankly, since they're the owners. The executive is not the owner, and neither is our council member, but them expressing their the opposition, obviously, it's really, it's a Councilmember Young's jurisdiction, if you will. That should have some weight, but you never know how these things will pan out. But
Okay, well, that's important. So I would like sooner rather than later, and I'd like to get the committee members' feelings on this, that we relay. I think it would be important, and I would like to have my fellow council members here support that we make sure that we notify the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee that we are very opposed to anything that takes local control when it comes to planning issues away from us.
right.
And the sooner that, in talking to Katrina just about something else, and we kind of brushed on this issue, you know, things are going to start moving real fast next week down there. So I am all about local control. I think every jurisdiction should have local control. And boy, Katrina, when you start talking about an omnibus bill where they're going to package up a bunch of development regulations into, that scares the heck out of me. I've never heard of an omnibus bill when it comes to planning. Have you?
No, this would be the first major update to growth management
Yeah,
since
well,
its adoption. And oh, we're all getting an Amber Alert. Okay,
Yeah, I'm like, what
yeah.
what is going on?
is
Okay,
happening? Emergency broadcast.
So I guess
yeah, it would be one of the first times that it would be more than just a handful of items.
yeah. Well, I would just like to get input from my fellow committee members on whether or not they feel it's important that we relay that information to the Governmental Affairs Committee.
Yes. So I'm on the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, so I'll definitely relay that. I'm in total agreement that we need to keep a really, really tight eye on this. And also definitely in agreement with you for local control being retained as much as possible, especially when it comes to planning and building. If we can, Katrina, do you know if there's any bill numbers that are already out there, or if it's just a rumor that they're going to be presented? Because if you can get me the bill number, then we can follow it on wa.leg.gov. You can follow that thing. You can read the entire bill. You can see who sponsored it, all their information, and really keep in close contact with those people. And then also just really follow it, you know, once it goes to the floor and once it goes to, you know, XYZ, it has a path it has to follow. Some of these bills will die right off the bat and others will make it really far. So whatever we can do because chances are some of these bills are going to have a title that's not going to have anything to do with local control and planning, but buried in that bill is where you're going to find that stuff. And so that's where we have to be really careful and really watchful, is reading all the fine print, every page of those bills, because they sneak stuff in there all the time. So
Councilmember Markley, I'm not sure if they have numbers yet, but they are not hypothetical. They've been being worked through, and I was actually notified by our AWC representative who works on governmental affairs, and we were given kind of a first look, if you will, on at least two of them.
oh,
and so they're I mean, I can't say for 100% certain, but you know, AWC is looking at them, the Association of Washington Cities and Counties are looking at them, and they're expected to go forward this session.
do you know if they're House bills, Senate bills, like HB, SB? I can find out too. Just
yeah, once they have bill numbers,
Mhm.
then you know, I will definitely let you know. Also, Josh Weiss, he's been in contact with me about them too. So I know Gordon Thomas Honeywell is tracking them,
Okay, great.
or will be tracking them as well once they're initiated. I apologize. I just searched my email and I can't find them right now.
It's okay. We can find them. And once we have the bill numbers, that'll be really helpful because then we'll know who the sponsors are and we'll know who we need to fight with if necessary in a professional way. You know what I mean? But you know, who we need to talk to about these bills. And obviously our state reps are going to need to be involved in this and hopefully on board as well.
That's so right. I mean, what is so scary when you start talking about an omnibus bill, it's I'll give in on this one if you give in on this one. And that is just where things get really screwed up and it gets a lot of momentum because everybody wants their own little thing in. So boy, that's terrifying news.
Yeah. That, by the way, I'm in agreement with Councilmember French with your concern and Councilmember Markley. Just in the last few months of 2020, sitting on PCRC, when you look at the other cities in Pierce County, for example, just local here, you realize, hey, we are fairly unique. Let me put it that way. In fact, extremely unique. I'll just say it. Other than a few other just a couple other cities that I can rattle off. Stilicon's one of them. Stilicon is the closest thing I can come to that's sort of like Gig Harbor in some ways. But the other ones are very expansive. They are growth oriented. You can go, particularly as you head toward the Cascades, the growth interest grows as you head that direction. Okay, Port of Tacoma and go right down the line, and it's a very different set of objectives than I think the city of Gig Harbor has been working to. So I agree with your assessment there. Okay, now on to item number 2 on the agenda, the 2021 annexation feasibility study, which goes right into this. Who's got the ball here? Katrina, you're the...
All right. So noting that this hasn't started yet, I just wanted to give a quick, just discuss this quickly with the committee based on Councilmember Heim's recommendation. Again, as I mentioned in our previous item, I still need to meet with the mayor and city administrator to come up with the administration's priority list. I can't state that the annexation study will be number 1, but it will be very high on the list. And once we have that prioritized list, we will, of course, bring it to the committee for discussion. However, with this study, it will begin with a request for proposals from qualified consultants to lead us through this process. The main components of the project will be identification of our areas within our UGA. So we need to agree on the areas that we want to analyze, which would be all of them. It's just how they're broken out into geographies will be the discussion there. Within each of the geographies, we'll look at things such as economics, population and employment, existing and future capacity for that, as well as look a deep dive into capital facilities, both existing and required for future development. And that would take into account water, water, sewer, storm, roads, fire, schools, kind of all of the, what would be necessary for the city to take those on. As part of a request for proposals, we would look to the consultant to come up with a public participation plan and schedule after the data collection and compilation is done in order to receive public feedback in terms of ranked prioritization, which would be the goal of the study, not only to get the information based on these subgeographies, but also to receive public input so that the council could make a decision on annexation prioritization so we can do targeted annexations. That information and the public input and report would go to the Planning Commission for their recommendation to the council. And from then it would go to the Planning and Building Committee for your review, concurrence, questions, modifications prior to heading to the entire council. And again, this is expected to take between 9 and 12 months. So it would behoove us to get our request for proposals out as soon as possible to get this started. I know that there's a lot of public interest in this. We've been getting calls from folks within different areas of the urban growth area. And I would anticipate this would be a highly visible item that people would like to comment and be involved in.
Just a question, the sequence of items here, I think may be a key. Does the GMA and the buildable lands report include UGA?
So this work plan item is 100% separate.
I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah, from the buildable lands report. We would, however, take what is defined within this study and utilize it within our comprehensive plan update in terms of targeted annexations. You know, per the Growth Management Act, we shouldn't have urban growth area unless the city does have plans to eventually annex it. So, you know, important discussions will need to happen regarding all of our urban growth areas. I know that East Bay, for instance, was in our urban growth area for a long time. That was a policy decision that the city had to remove that from the UGA. So again, that is possible of an outcome. I'm hesitant to give the end or an outcome or lead us to an outcome because I'd like us to have the data set and kind of go through the public input process, but this would not have an effect on the buildable lands report. It would eventually if we annex because numbers may go from Pierce County into a city bucket. But again, it wouldn't impact us in terms of capacity numbers.
Exactly. By the way, the other question I had on that, and then I'll get to you, Councilmember French. When you annex something, do you get that area, okay? But you also inherit the capacity, the buildable requirement for that area too.
That's correct. So when you annex an area, you not only take what is existing, but you also take the demand that was associated with that geography. Okay. So if we take somewhere that has 500 people and it has a capacity to take an additional 200, we take the 500 existing and we also get the 200 demand. So so that's correct. It's kind of just shifting columns from Pierce County to us if we take it. So and the same if we don't, it would go like East Bay went from an urban UGA designation that was associated with us to a rural designation that now is only associated with the county. So it can go both ways.
Right. But I think the bottom line of that is you can't annex things to just get buildable area to meet your targets as a city, excluding the UGA areas. In other words, you just can't expand out and say, okay, we'll take this, okay, we'll get this land and then we'll build more and it'll count toward our numbers. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. Well, you are correct. So if we took and annexed a portion of the UGA in, the existing population that's there would become City of Gig Harbor, and also the demand that was associated with that geography. So if there was a capacity of 200 people and there was a demand in the population allocation chart, we would then take that demand that was to go to Pierce County and that demand would come with it, if that makes sense.
Yep, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we can't just take the existing and say no more. We have to take the existing development as well as the population or employment demand that comes along with that.
Got it. Okay. Okay, Councilmember Frenich, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I'm assuming that, and I don't know if I CC'd Katrina, but did you, Councilmember Markley and Councilmember Himes, see the letter that I sent to the mayor and the city administrator about this issue?
I don't think so.
I don't think I saw it. When did you send it?
Beginning of December.
Boy, I may have seen it and forgot about it. But I don't recall seeing it. I'm sure it would have caught my attention.
Well, it was just a request of the mayor and the city administrator to work to, I think this is a very important issue and I'd like to get it done this year, to get that RFP out as soon as possible. You know, because as Ms. Knutson just said, this is a process that the consultant's going to spend a lot of time on, and then the planning commission is going to be spending a lot of time on. So, you know, we've got the present makeup of the council and administration. I would sure like to see this project be completed by December. And from what Ms. Knutson just said, it sounds like that is a fairly lofty goal to try and achieve it. I CC'd both Councilmember Markley and Himes on that letter. I'm sure you received it, right, Bob?
I think I did. I think I did.
Bob Larson?
You're referring to an email that I've received, I think just this past weekend, maybe, after Christmas, no?
No, it was early in December.
I'm not finding it, Councilmember Franich, but I normally I save those things, you know, aside, but can you maybe resend it?
Yeah, I will.
Thank
I
you.
will.
Just resend it. I think I
It was
did.
just in anticipation of this. I was really glad to see that it was on our agenda today. So, you know, and I appreciate Ms. Knutson saying that it may not be number one, but that it is at least high on her list. And I'm hoping that the administrator and the mayor will concur with that so we can get this ball rolling.
Yeah.
And I'll resend it to everybody.
It's definitely a key component moving into our comprehensive plan update, specifically in relation to our continued relationship with Pierce County. So, and the work that we want to do there on a potential urban growth area management agreement. It's a foundational piece, and I think so.
Good choice of words. I guess independently, I came to the same conclusion that you did, Councilmember French. This seems to be a building block to have a meaningful buildable lands report, and as part of this growth allocation process. If you don't understand what you got out there and you don't know what you want and what you don't necessarily want, it really you're playing with unknown cards in your hand, you put it that way. So I would second that. Anything we can do from a priority standpoint to get that thing going, and as you say, get answers by the end of the year. And by the way, that's the other thing I'm interested in is how these things dovetail timing wise. I'm assuming by the end of the year they would support buildable lands report and this growth allocation discussion. You're nodding your head, Katrina.
Yeah. So with the presentation to the committee regarding the PCRC and the different committees, we can also put together just a really short 5-minute presentation discussion item about the interface between all of these and how they'll fit together. But really high level, we would expect the buildable lands report to be done sometime this year, as well as the annexation study. So how I'd like to think of them, as well as the population and employment projections, are they all kind of come together, and they're all necessary pieces for us to make policy decisions in our comp plan update. Okay. So they're all going to be, all of this information will be converging together around the same time and will help us plan for the next 20 years.
Okay. Councilmember Markley.
So would it be this committee that would recommend hiring the consultants? Like, when do we need to do that to get this going? And have we budgeted for those consultants already?
Yes, so they're in the budget already.
I thought I saw them in there.
Mhm. Yep. So Carl would be the project manager for this. He's out until Wednesday. I'm going to meet with Bob Larson and the mayor and talk about our priorities. If this is chosen to be the #1 priority, likely we'll have an RFP hit the street. I mean, it won't be too, maybe within a week and a half of that decision. And what my recommendation would be is that if we could have one of the committee members, one of you three, sit on the interview panel with us to help us choose the consultant that we end up going with. I think that would be something that would be beneficial. And then we can just have regular updates to the committee as the project moves forward.
Good.
Great.
Great.
I
Okay.
would volunteer for that position if either of you aren't too interested. I would really like to be part of that.
I'll take a pass on this one by all means. Councilmember Markley, it'd be a great learning experience for you.
It would. I'm learning a lot right now though. So if Councilmember Franich would really like to do that and be part of the interview committee, that would be great, because I trust that he will represent us well and make a good decision, for who to hire there. So
Thank you.
Okay, good. We trust you'll ask the difficult questions. Wait a minute, I got beeped on that one. Okay, let's move on to the buildable lands report update. And I think you've already touched on it to some extent. You can elaborate. You're heading toward the end of the year, obviously, on the buildable lands update.
Yes. So again, Carl is the person that's been managing this from the city side. So I will do my best to fill in for him on this. So where we are right now, again, Pierce County is by growth management. The counties are responsible for the reports. The city, we are kind of assistants in that we provide data, development data, as well as kind of our assumptions, both for all of our land capacity assumptions, but primarily how we calculate density, what our zoning is and what it allows, any reduction factors that we have, so like wetland streams, etc. And where we are currently, and this schedule has been modified a couple of times due to COVID. And so I do want to acknowledge that here, that there's been some staffing lapses at the county level that we have been working through. We are again back on a good path. And so I feel confident that this report will be done. We have given the county our pipeline data. So we've looked at our existing and approved plats, short plats, etc., so that they know what we have going on land that may otherwise be vacant or underutilized. They have that. What we're working toward now is providing them an accurate representation of how we calculate density. And we're also looking at providing them with GIS data for our type 1 through 4 wetlands, our streams, our ravine sidewalls, bluffs, and tidelands and buffers. And essentially what that will do on a citywide level is help them to remove areas that would not be developable. And again, that will go in buildable lands terms. You know, we have vacant, we have underutilized, and we have developed. Vacant is a property that has no structures or other encumbrances on it. Underutilized, an example of that would be, you know, one home on an acre. that's considered underutilized based on the zoning. And that would have assumed development, well, depending on a number of factors, if there's no wetlands, bluffs, etc. And then developed, it would be if the density of the parcel, well, if it's platted, short platted, where nothing else could be done, or if the density of the parcel meets the eventual maximum density, then that would be considered developed. So essentially, Pierce County is trying to come up with our all of the final items that I just mentioned in order to have that reduction factor. So that's kind of where we are in terms of buildable lands now. They will be meeting, I believe, in February, they being the county with all of the cities, and talk about finalization of data needs in order for them to run the final capacity analysis.
Okay. Is there a standardized process on the as you go forward with the assumptions relative to density? You always go to the maximum density that land use and zoning would allow for undeveloped property?
No, there isn't anything that's mandated by the Growth Management Act. So the county really has a lot of latitude in how that is done. For instance, in Kitsap County, where I had written the previous 2 buildable lands reports for the zones within county zones, for the capacity analysis, we utilized the minimum density. I think in some zones, Pierce County does not utilize minimum. I could have them provide a chart and get, either email that or present that to you. But it really is up to the local county to decide what reduction factors and what capacity factors are used.
Okay, so that's at a county level. Okay.
It is.
Aha. Okay. And who's our representative on that? You or Carl or?
No, Carl is a representative on that. You know, I should go back for a second. We do have an ability to have different reduction factors and calculating factors than other cities. They do, however, have to be based in code. So some of the things that we have been providing to Pierce County are all of our zoning changes that would have been different from the previous buildable lands report. So any of the density changes that the council's made over the last 4 years, we've been working to get those updated. Some of the reduction factors that were added to plats and short plats, we've worked with Pierce County to add those in. So those reduction factors are unique to Gig Harbor. So I didn't mean to sound that we can't have anything that's different. We can. It's just we have to tell the county that we want it that way.
Okay. So we could factor in things like historic districts, for example, versus non-historic districts, or things like that, I assume?
Well, we could, and we do in terms of buildable lands for the historic district with regard to height. So that's another thing in assuming density. You know, we can't, you know, we need to, one factor to look at is height, whereas, you know, in the historic district, it's much shorter than in other areas of the city. So okay. Those things are taken into consideration.
Okay. Councilmember Franich.
Thank you. So we had this discussion of several months ago about how this kind of was the timing on this. Is the Department of Commerce come out with when they've said that because PSRC was kind of jumping ahead, it seemed to me anyway, they were kind of jumping ahead with some conclusions, waiting on that the Department of Commerce wasn't coming out till the spring with their actual numbers. Is that still the case?
I believe that's the case. Just before Carl went on vacation, I had him reach out to our Department of Commerce planner, and I don't know if he's heard back from her yet, but I'll have him follow up with the committee on that, with that question, answer to that question.
Okay, and who at the county is sitting at the table when it comes to the discussions with these local jurisdictions?
We've primarily been working with Jessica Gwilt and Dan Cardwell.
What was the names?
Jessica Gwilt.
Gwilt?
It's Gwilt. And she's a
Okay.
senior planner with Planning and Public Works. And then Dan Cardwell's the planning supervisor.
And is that when these numbers get dissected, is it just those two people and representatives from each individual cities have individual meetings, or is it a group deal?
It's a group. So they're all meeting together and Carl is at the table for the city. And so I feel that we're adequately represented there. And I would encourage any of the committee members, if you have questions about that, you can funnel those through Carl or myself and we can get you the answers to that or to them. Just noting again, they're also working from home and, you know, have some other challenges. But if you have questions, we're happy. If we don't know the answer, we're happy to find those for you.
I appreciate that. And when did you say that meeting is tentatively scheduled to take place?
I believe it's the first week of February. They said that, I'm looking at an email that Carl provided me before he left. It looks like they're looking to have an inventory ready by late January and then reach out for a meeting in the first or second week of February.
Okay, and I guess this will kind of dovetail into the next, well, the growth allocation process. So I'll save my question about that till maybe you'll answer it in the meantime.
Okay. Any other questions then on buildable plans report before we move on to the growth allocation process?
I just
Actually,
had one-
we're already in it.
I just had one quick one for Katrina. And forgive my, I don't know if it's naivety or just, I don't know much about, I'm learning about all of this whole process, but underutilized land, are they saying that if there's a house on an acre and that person owns that parcel, is that person going to be forced to split their land or anything like that eventually? Or is that they own that, no one can touch that? I guess I was just maybe confused by the term underutilized and then thinking, okay, well, are they going to make them utilize that? Or is that just, you know?
Yeah, it's a term of, so even not just in planning, but in terms, maybe in terms of like assessor value, it's another good way to think about it. If the assessor's looking at that one house on 1 acre, noting that the zoning could allow 8 units, they're going to look at that and say that one house on that acre is not being utilized to its highest and best use, is their term. So essentially much more development could happen there and you could see taxes raised on that parcel because there's capacity for an additional 7 units on that land. There's nothing in state law that or local code or anything that I know of where we would have any power to force somebody to subdivide and develop. If somebody is, you know, on a single family home on an acre lot, then they can stay that way.
That's what I just wanted to make sure of.
Well, Councilmember Markley, thank you for that. I just, since the tape's rolling, that term, that should be nobody's business. I hate that term, underutilized land. It's ridiculous that the county even gets involved in that. And one thing that I was very proud that we did last year, the year before, we used to have a minimum density where, Councilmember Markley, if you had a house on 1 acre, you couldn't break it into just 2. You would have to break it into 4. So we did away with that, and I thought it was a good thing. But anytime I can get on the record talking about the word underutilized, I don't let it go to waste. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, your front yard is safe.
Oh, I don't have an acre. I'm just saying if I ever did, I want to make sure I get to keep it.
Okay. The growth allocation process. I don't know if you've seen, I have not put it in front of council yet, but it's something I had to do first to you and then on the PSRC side, what they had as far as a top-down allocation. And I know, Katrina, you've seen that data. In fact, you've been involved in some of it. And we've got it down to what I would call a number for collectively for all so-called small cities and towns. Okay, that was the lowest they went to. By the way, it was top down. That is, they started with the Puget Sound region, and then boom, 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 just continuing to allocate, going down, down, down. And we are close to the bottom rung in terms of percent allocation, other than rural Pierce County, which just happens to have the lowest, and I'm talking residential now, allocation percentage wise. I think we're about 7%. In fact, I remember that number, 7% of the total number for Pierce County in terms of residential will fall on the small town and small city and town allocation. But I'll go back and get that report. They got several charts in there that are very interesting. That's probably I don't know what, I guess I'll defer to you, Katrina. The going in position in terms of assumption is, I just assumed whatever the overall number is, that's a good starting point. And then we try to add or subtract from that. So,
Yeah.
so like we gave it the office. And by the way, that's the PSRC numbers go from 2017 to 2044, if I remember correctly, is the magic dates. In other words, all the growth targets that they've got in there, they start in 2017. So we would actually pick up some of our wild growth for the last couple of years in that number, okay? Now that could work for us or against us, depending on who knows what. But that's that, and that's there, and it has not been cascaded any further that I'm aware of in PCRC to individual small cities and towns. Okay, they just had it at that category, as I would call it. Does that same process hold true for the GMA numbers? That is, are they coming down from on high and then cascading down smaller, finer in terms of their allocations?
Yes. So I think something that's important that you just mentioned that's important to know is that regardless if we're talking about the vision allocation or if we're talking about the Office of Financial Management population allocation, both of them are a top-down approach. So OFM will give a high, medium, and low to each county, and then it's incumbent upon the cities and the counties to work together to come up with how they're going to share that pie. Now, again, the question is still out for grabs or out for debate or whatever that is. I'm not really good at those things, but if we're going to choose the low, the mid, or the high. And when that decision point comes out, I would encourage us to give our opinion to Derek Young, who will be representing us to the council, the county council. So that's important to know. We're not going to be, it's not a Gig Harbor will take this coming from the state. It's kind of a negotiation through PCRC that will happen. Carl is going to give a much more in-depth discussion of this and ask for committee input at your February meeting about population. And I say population and not growth because there will be a time when we will come forward with you for discussion and input on employment as well, because the city will need to take some share of employment allocation as well. But essentially where we are in the process now with the PSRC numbers that were, again, from 2017 that were They've wrapped them up now, so it's 2020 to 2024 or 2044. Those have been broken out into the major geographies that Councilmember Himes talked about, which are core cities. I can tell you what those are while we go through this. So our metro city is Tacoma, as we know. Our core cities, and I use those in quotes because these are PSRC terms, are Auburn, or the Pierce County Sheriff Auburn, Lakewood, Puyallup, and University Place. The high transit or high capacity transit communities, they have their own allocation. Those are DuPont, Fife, Fircrest, Sumner, Mid-County, Parkland, Spanaway, Midland, and South Hill. Those last three are unincorporated areas. And then we get to our city and town geography, which we get to, I think it's like 19,000 people that need to be distributed among Bonnie Lake, Buckley, Carbonado, Eatonville, Edgewood, Gig Harbor, Milton, Ording, Pacific, Roy, Ruston, South Prairie, Stillicum, and Wilkeson. The consultant has asked us for initial feedback on how much of a growth share the city wants. We as staff have pushed back and said, you know, without a process, we're not comfortable necessarily giving them that number, particularly when we don't have the Office of Financial Management numbers yet allocated to Pierce County. However, noting that we do want to participate with our fellow cities, we I've directed Carl, and he's working with others in the department and city to pull together some data points for the committee's consideration. We're pulling together, number one, what our pipeline is. We're working to have a more finalized pipeline than what was given to Pierce County in 2019 when they first started the Buildable Lands Report, because there are a number of plats that have been completed in that time. And the reason that that's important is, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a complete puzzle piece, but if we're going to come to the committee and ask for a number, I at least want to be able to give you the data point of how many we have going right now. Mm. And then we can compare that to what we asked for last time, where we were, and what we know that we have going in the pipeline. Or else the number, it could be a dartboard, in my opinion, of what we want, and it can be fairly subjective. So that's the first data set point that I'd like us to have for the discussion in February. The second that we're working with Pierce County to gain is a ballpark of what our existing capacity is. Mm-hmm. So I want to know what capacity, again, it can be within 5%, you know, but some order of magnitude of what our capacity is. And then we can compare that to what we know is in our pipeline, and then we can get a delta. And without that, I don't know if we would feel comfortable as staff providing a recommendation on what to do there. Mm-hmm. There are some cities who have given their input already. And it looks like, for instance, Bonnie Lake, they are asking for 7,600 people. Their current city base population is 21,000. So, you know, that's pretty close to half of their city they're asking for. It's 41% of the regional share. So we'll also have information that we'll share with you next time in regard to our housing units and how that's calculated, because not only is demand given to us by population, it's also given to us by housing unit. And there's a calculation. That would be great. Yeah. That'd be great if you're... Yeah, and there's a calculation that goes kind of explaining what that is. I think will be important for the committee to know. Interestingly, our 2000 to 2020 annual growth rate, so growth by year, was 2.8% for that first, for the entire 20-year period, which is pretty significant, a little bit higher than what we thought. Our post-recession growth rate and that would be defined as 2014 through the end of 2020, is the highest of any of our sister cities, and that's at 5.9%.
That's the we gave at the office discussion.
Yes, and you can see Paul's, reaction. And that percentage there goes to what we've been saying about how busy, the permitting side has been, and it goes as a testament to staff for getting all of that work done in a professional manner. But the long of the short is, we're going to pull together this data set to give you kind of the points that we think that are necessary in order for you to make a decision, or at least come up with a ballpark. And we would like to have that discussion in February.
Okay. If you could provide also any other cities that have, or towns that have submitted their requests at this point, that would help too. For example, you mentioned Bonnie Lake. Sitting in PCRC, this is another area where, by the way, we're the only city on this side of the bridge in Pierce County. Okay, that's number one. And there are cities over there that are on a completely different page than we are. They are, and particularly I can name the corridors. It's I-5, it's I-167, it's I-512, not I-5, State Route 512, State Route 167, I-5. They are growth focused, let me put it that way. They are, you can see right where they're coming from in all the discussions. They are emphasizing growth. So there may be people out there that, as you indicated in Bonnie Lake, are looking for more than their quote average, more than the average share would suggest. Okay, and some of those people, I think, to encourage them along those lines. Well, that's great. Go average in our case, which is one alternative, when we look at this thing. So just a comment there, and I think the data you're talking about will really help as a good starting point. But philosophically, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at in the PCRC discussions. Are there other communities that are actually growth focused? That is, they would like to grow, both residentially and commercially. They want to do both. So that may provide us with some opportunities, some flexibility, put it that way. Okay, Councilmember Freilich.
So does that do they know what our pipeline numbers are?
Pierce County, we gave them pipeline data. Again, data is only, well, this is an opinion, but data sets, once we give them to you, time goes by, right? So we gave Pierce County our pipeline data as of some point in time in 2019. A lot has happened since then. And so what Michelle is working with Carl on, and Patty McGillian, our permit coordinator, they're working to bring our pipeline up to date, because I don't want to provide you with the 2019 pipeline and have that be as off as we already know it is based on our 5.9% post-recession growth rate. So the Carl, Michelle, and Patty are working really diligently to update the pipeline, and we'll have that in February as well.
Okay, and it's not Cascadia anymore. What's the name of that? It used to be Cascadia up in Bonnie Lake.
Oh, the development? I can't remember.
Is it Tejalas? Is that south of town?
Yeah. So do they, God bless Bonnie Lake. I mean, if they want 7,000, I mean, that is a huge planned community that they have up there that I know is, over the last several years has finally started coming to fruition. So I'm assuming that's why they want that growth. For me personally, I wouldn't be offended to see our number be 0. And that doesn't mean I don't want to see any growth. that just means I don't want growth forced down our throat. That's about local control. And I would just really like to thank staff for bringing these last 3 items up to this committee, because in all the years that I've served before, in the years, just the last 2 years, this has never come up where the council or a committee has actually had a chance to get this involved early on in the stages so we could have some input before this was all just done and nobody really was brought up to date until the numbers got dropped on us. So I really appreciate you bringing us up to speed on this and letting us have a chance to weigh in. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Great, great. But by the way, I would add to that, this discussion, it gets bigger than Ben-Hur by the time you're done. When you start talking about the transportation element, it gets really interesting. And that's where I was mentioning these corridors. They're what I would call communal efforts. And that is certain cities, small cities and towns fall along certain corridors, okay? And you can start to see in the project lists that come up, transportation-wise, that they are working in unison to get certain things done so that they can handle more traffic, both commercially and residentially, okay? And you start to see these patterns starting to form. Being the only city on this side of the bridge, we don't have too many people to link up with, because Bremerton and Port Orchard and some of the other gangs, they're in Kitsap County. That works against us trying to get projects, but it also works for us in the growth world, I think, called because most of these cities are these, what I would call these group things, are pushing to get transportation funding for major projects. The 167 stuff is huge. The Canyon Road out on Puyallup's a massive one. I mean, I'm talking millions. These guys are throwing a lot of money around. As we go forward, there's other things that they're gonna play into this. So I want to make sure that we're looking at the whole field. This is the University of Michigan coming in here. This is Tom Brady. You see the whole field, and see that whole field, and understand part of it.
We don't accept your Tom Brady.
Okay. Yep. Okay. You do. get my M flag out here. Okay. Any other discussion on this item? This is a biggie, and like we said before, and you nailed it, Paul, the other 2 items feed right into it. They absolutely feed in. Annexation feeds into it. Buildable lands feeds into it. Transportation is going to feed into it. And by the way, I don't know if you caught that city allocation that Katrina rattled off. In addition to so-called core cities, are these transit cities that essentially will be served via rapid transit. And they get a much higher allocation, particularly of residential, than, let's say, a normal small city would get, like Gig Harbor. So that's a big deal. To the best of my knowledge, there is no bus rapid transit coming to Gig Harbor. And I think I hate to use the term isolation, but to some extent it is. Our isolation is a factor in that. Because there's no other cities around comparable to Gig Harbor. Okay, anything else on that? Okay. For the good of the order, I think that was an item that was added, I believe, Katrina, in your shop.
Yeah, we just wanted to provide committee members any opportunity to discuss anything. We didn't have anything that we needed to
Oh, okay,
discuss.
okay, okay. Okay, so I'll open it up to Councilmember Markley and Councilmember French. You would add anything? And same thing with you, Bob Larson, and same thing with you, Katrina and Paul Rice. I'll just open it right up.
Any update on the GIS map, development map, project map? I don't remember what you called it, that you were saying would be available like early January.
Yes, we're still expecting it to be on the website within January.
Okay.
Due to vacations and such, there has been not a lot of movement since we last met.
Okay.
Okay. This is the new project tracking tool.
Yes.
Ah, I can hardly wait.
I know, I'm so excited for that. And I'm so excited for that, for all the emails and phone calls I get. Hey, do you know what's going on with what such and such project? Hey, what's going on with, I can just be like, here, this is the link you need to go to. It has all the information and there you go. So that'll be so helpful.
Yeah, and we
Yeah,
can,
it'll be good. And, one of the things too, it's not going to be perfect when it's launched. And, we know that, but, anything that can provide information that, is open and has availability, is good. And then we'll take the feedback received from council members and the public and make improvements.
Yeah.
I think there's a version of that right now, because I don't even know how I got onto the city's website. I was looking for the back door to get onto the deals, but I did find a project list. I don't know how complete it was, but and it had some information on it. So I guess Council Member Markley, that just to circle back about the local control when it comes to what's coming down the potential pipe from the state legislature, are we in agreement that you will make the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee aware that we want to make sure that our state representatives know that local control is important to us?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I know you're on board, I think Councilmember Himes also said he was in agreement with that. So yes, I will definitely make that known to the committee.
Okay.
and by the way, if there's anything else from the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee that would influence what we're doing here, information coming the other way, it would be very, very helpful. I just read an article about the transportation dilemma. Mr. Hobbs, that's the Senate Transportation Committee leader that I testified at last year. He's been pushing for basically a carbon tax. Okay, well, there's multiple alternatives. The fundamental issue is the state has got, right now, if you look at the growth they're projecting, the transportation is going to be, I think, the limiting factor on a lot of things. If you want to move things around, okay, you got to have the capability to do it, or this work at home, this remote work thing kicks in big time, one of the two, and rapid bus transit, I should say. If those don't kick in, then a lot of these things start to come unglued, I think. Okay, people haven't said it yet, but I think you can connect the dots and come to that conclusion. So anything that's coming down from intergovernmental affairs along those lines, I think would be helpful. Yes, Katrina.
Along that line, Councilmember Markley, I forwarded you 2 emails, one with 2 bills that were being proposed. I was able to find them. They don't have bill numbers yet.
Okay.
I forwarded you the omnibus GMA as it is right now, marked up. So just, it's for information, but also the two that I know of right now from our legislative policy analyst at AWC are, one is it's called the Salmon Net Ecological Gain Bill. And that would look at changing, it adds a definition for net ecological gain, discusses mitigation more. It adds salmon recovery as a goal of the Growth Management Act, requires our and so there's a lot in that one. And so looks like that one will be something that we'll need to track. And then the other is a climate bill that adds climate change resiliency as a goal to the Growth Management Act. It has a sub element that Pierce County would need to apply or abide by the requirements to that. So I sent you those two. From what AWC says, it has enough support to, get a bill number and be heard. So those will be ones that hopefully we can have some committee coordination and track and comment on.
Could you send me those, Katrina, please?
Yes, I'll forward them to both you, Councilmember Himes and Franich.
That'd
Yeah,
be great.
anything we talk about in the IGA committee, and then also, so I serve on the Governmental Relations Committee for the Chamber of Commerce. And so we're going to be doing our legislative send-off this Wednesday. You have to register for it, but it's on Zoom, where we're going to have Senator Randall, Representatives Young, Caldier, and Derek Young, or I think it's Derek Young and Derek Kilmer. And we've got a lot of questions for them about taxes and other things that, what are their priorities for 2021? What taxing are they looking at? I mean, there's everything from the road usage charge to GPS tracking to the carbon tax there's a lot being floated around right now. So I will be sure to, and anyone, I think you can attend that. If you just send an email to the chamber, they'll give you an invite to that legislative send-off. But that's going to be interesting to hear what the different priorities are. We know what their four main priorities for their 2021 legislative agenda. They're not surprising to me, but I was a little surprised, I guess. Just some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't, in light of kind of what we're going through right now as a state, as a world. But anyway, I think it would be interesting. There's going to be a lot of crossing over of committees discussion that's going to need to happen between committees, I think. So whether that means we talk about it in a council meeting or whether we talk about it in a study session, whatever it means, I think as we go through this legislative session, there is, there's a lot happening, even though they're saying that they don't really want a whole lot of bills introduced. They don't want, because it's all virtual, it's going to be a lot harder for them to just go stick a bunch of bills in at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that's still a possibility. And so they're requesting that people really narrow down what they're going to ask for and really narrow down the bills so that they don't have an overwhelming amount of bills. They're trying to streamline it, but we still, even with that being kind of what they're going for and their goal, we still need to really keep on top of these different bills, for sure, because I feel like COVID has been an excuse legislatively to try to pull some things and not be super transparent about it. So I want to make sure that we're not falling through those cracks.
Councilmember Markley, I tried signing up to get the Zoom link, and the minimum you could do it was the $10.
Yeah,
So,
I think there's a minimum donation of, I think it is a $10 minimum donation. You could.
okay, so I mean, is that something that the city can pay for, or we got to pay for that ourselves, or?
I paid for it myself. If it's reimbursable, great. If not, it's, yeah, I don't know. That would be a question for City Administrator Larson, maybe.
Okay, and my other question, and I would like to hear Mr. Larson's answer to that. Do you know how much time the legislators are going to allocate towards question and answer? And do you have to have, if you are attending, do you have to turn in your questions in advance, or how is that process going to work?
So I believe that there will be 2 questions that will be asked by the Governmental Relations Committee, which we just formulated this morning in our Zoom meeting this morning. And then the rest, I think each legislator gets 8 minutes of introduction and like just talking about their platform and what they're kind of just giving and they don't have to take the whole 8 minutes, but I think they get 8 minutes. And then the rest is dedicated to question and answer that will be in the chat box on the side. So it's pretty much first come, first serve. If you want your question in there, just get it typed up into the chat box right at the beginning. And then the moderator or the host will then read off, I think pretty much in order, any questions that are asked by the public.
Do you know who the moderator is?
Ooh,
For the chamber event coming up?
it's a chamber event, but I don't think it's a chamber person. Let me go into,
I can grab it here quick.
But I mean, you do think that it will be first come, first serve, and they won't be, pulling out the hard questions and giving them the easy ones?
I don't know that I've never seen this moderator before, so I'm not sure.
It's being sponsored by Tacoma Community College, right? It doesn't say who the moderator is, though.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It's the let's see.
Just says the 4 folks are going to be appearing.
They just have a send-off host, but it doesn't say who that send-off host is going to be.
It's also a free event.
Yeah.
It's a free event?
Yeah, this one is, yeah.
I had to pay. That's weird.
Oh, Joe, with the one that's this Wednesday, right? 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says register here. It says to receive. Where did it say it's here?
I try to go through the free thing, Bob, but I kept getting kicked back to the $10 one.
Yeah, I just ended up finally paying the $10 because I was like, I have to register for this. I have to be there. So yeah, I think it is.
Register for this free upcoming Zoom event. Yeah. So in
Oh,
any event,
see.
I'll just get to the question here quickly. Generally speaking, things that are related to city business, and this is one of those, would be reimbursable to council
Okay.
members. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have the name of the person, but generally, Councilmember Franich, the rule is they go first come, first serve. If there's duplicate questions, sometimes they'll skip a duplicate. And chances are that person isn't gonna know who the people are that are asking the questions. They're literally just looking at the questions, and they're pretty unbiased on a normal basis because we do these public affairs forums every Thursday morning, and the moderator, he just reads them just right down the line, unless it's offensive. If it's an offensive question, they won't read it. If there's profanity, they won't read it. So, and if it's more of a statement than a question, sometimes they'll skip over those. So just make sure it's an actual question that all of the legislators could potentially answer. If you direct it at one person or another, those also tend to sometimes get skipped, as long as they're more general and they can be answered by, and some are going to be specific because Derek Young's job is completely different from Michelle Caldier's job. So, there are some that are going to be more directed at the position itself. But overall, we're just trying to get an overall feel for what our legislators are actually thinking going into this session. And I hope it's a warm fuzzy at the end. So.
Okay, I see by the clock on the wall, we're past our scheduled closure time. Are there any other burning issues that we'd like to bring up at this time? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
I.
Aye. Thank you very much. I think it was a pretty good meeting.
Yeah.
We've hit some key points. And I look forward to continued progress on this. And by the way, particularly for staff, Bob, you, and Katrina, and Paul, and Michelle, if there was anything that we are doing that is in some way impeding you, please advise us, okay? And if there's anything that we can do to help or to facilitate, advise us, okay? Because I'd really like to make this a productive thing. I'm really big on that. So with that, have a good evening, and I'll go back and continue my work on the arc. Looking out the window here.